Saturday in Hebrews 9:4 and Ellen G. White. Many people like to use Adventist church texts and the Ellen White texts to define that the term Sabbath in Hebrews 9:4 is not a reference to seventh-day sanctification of the week. The issue is not linked to the term sabbatism, but the term rest, or rest. In Greek we have sabatisms, but Ellen's texts refer to another text involving Hebrews 4:8. Here we have the Greek term katapauos. Now we have two verses, one with sabatismos, another with katapauos. The question is, what do they mean by using different terms? We must understand that depending on the meaning we have that Hebrews 4:3 defines the term is that we enter into the rest. Here we have the term we enter, in the Greek, is a passive or active present tense of the first person plural. And we have the term we have believed, second aorist verb in the passive infinitive plural male voice. What defines that the term involves the substantial we enter is present and not future. But we also have the text of Hebrews 4:5, which uses the term come into my rest. Now we have the present and the future in the text. That is, we have a duality of periods for rest. In this way we have two rests determined for the future and one for the present. So if talking about the rest for the future is correct, and if determining the rest for the present is also correct, the question would involve which rest I determine to choose to speak. If the Adventist Church preaches the Advent, it would be normal to talk about future rest. Then we can pick up various texts from Ellen White, with reference to future rest, and we can observe, with reference to present rest. In the present, Ellen cites rest as working in God's work, which we can make parallel with Isaiah 58 hours 13 minutes, 14. In another text by Ellen she quotes, "She will not find spiritual rest in this life or in the life to come." Again we have both future and present positions. What we have the parallel of verse John 5:16-17, which must be in agreement with Isaiah 58 hours 13 minutes and 14, because Jesus could not break the law, and said, "My Father worketh hitherto, and I work also." Because of this, Ellen's text is correct with verses 11.13 when she says those who are willing to give the Lord faithful and sincere service of love will not find spiritual rest in this life or in the life to come. In other words, the work of Jesus on the seventh day is to give the Lord, faithful and sincere, the service of love, which completely balances that Jesus on the Sabbath works and his Father worked in sincere service of love. This rest, therefore, is the sabatisms contained in Hebrews 9:4 that refer to the correct sanctification of the seventh day, and determined in Isaiah 58 hours 13 minutes and 14. Ellen's texts determine the practical factor of applying the definite rest which in the original is sabatismos. Ellen has in no way violated the meaning of the term, but it is plausible that she did not receive all the light on the text, since she is not a theologian in Greek. That is, the prophecy for John defines what John knew, the prophecy for Paul defines what Paul knew. Paul knew the theoretical and historical foundations of the Bible. John did not know. Thus God acts in the prophets in order to use the knowledge of the prophets. John and Paul speak of the future, but Paul clarifies the theology, and John expounds what God sends him, not knowing the meaning correctly but declaring love. Paul's union with John sheds light on biblical knowledge. Likewise with Ellen's texts, she defines factors of what she knows and what God sends her, not contrary to the theological concept, Elen does not define that Sabbath is not the Sabbath, but defines what is done on Saturday as reference to the text. We conclude therefore that anyone who seeks to use the texts of Ellen White to deny that Hebrews 4:9 quotes the sanctified seventh day is only using partialism, and tends to define something against what Ellen White defends as favorable, that is all. Who uses a text out of its foundation to deny something that the writer defends, saying that such a text is contrary to a preached doctrine, such being hypocritical. I explain. Ellen defends Sabbath keeping, in several texts. A person who wishes to deny the Sabbath will say that Ellen's texts to Hebrews 4:9 is not a reference to the Sabbath, which is a lie, but such an individual wants to deny the Sabbath. Not just defining that Ellen is not speaking of the Sabbath in Hebrews 4:9, so this individual considers Ellen's writings regarding his will to deny the Sabbath as correct, and all others who speak of the Sabbath he defines as wrong. Such an individual is hypocritical, because he uses different weights for his pleasure. That is, such a person holds true as Ellen White when she does not believe it, only in the text that suits her. Thus it is recommended to read the parable of the broom man, so one may have the idea that Ellen may not have knowledge of a Greek term as unique as sabatismos, in fact defining that the term involves the concept attached to sacred ritual of the seventh day, is indeed for connoisseurs of the history of the Greek terms. A simple-minded theologian would understand the historical limitations to knowledge. In other words, God could reveal the cure of leprosy by scientific means, but science must be developed by man, and God sends wisdom. This is the foundation of the differential theology between Elijah a farmer, and Daniel a wise, full professor. God's action among them is different, because it is linked to the lived factors of each one of them.
If you are looking for more content from different areas, visit the reformadorstacog.com website. News and detailed content can be found with system of research and organization of text and video.